What is up, everyone? Welcome to the first lesson of the microservices chapter in the full-time GoDev program, where the boys will be turned into men, where the engineers will be turned into gods. What I'm going to teach you here is never been taught on the internet. It's never been taught in a single course. It's not being found in a single Bible. It's non-existent. I'm going to give you an introduction on what we're going to build here. And what we're going to build is a real-world example. It's not an example. It's actually something that exists in the real world. It's basically when I think it was around 8 years ago, I worked for a company in Belgium, and they are basically responsible for managing the whole traffic infrastructure, the traffic lights, and also they were responsible for calculating the amount of money the trucks that are driving on the Belgium tollways, the Belgium pay roads, basically, how much they need to pay, how much the companies where they drive for needs to pay at the end of the month, based on the amount of kilometers they basically drove on these pay roads, right? That's what we're going to build. It's not something that is being invented. It's something that exists. And who wrote that thing? Yeah, exactly. Me, right? So basically, how is it going to work is we going to gradually build this thing out, right? Because there is always a concept in a lot of companies, which I'm not a big supporter for, and that's they go to a whiteboard and they draw the whole architecture out, right? That's something that is basically already telling how it should work, right? How an application, how a stack should work. The problem is it will never should work like it should work. You know what I mean? It's going to be an adventure where you are trying to minimize the amount of iterations before you come to how it should work. But today I'm going to show you how it could work. And by the end of the chapter, you know how it should work, if that makes any sense, right? So, yeah, let me open up this beautiful microservice outline. So basically what we're going to do is, how does it work? How can something work? How could we build something like that? So basically you have these trucks that are basically driving on the road, right? They're driving on the road, and each time, basically what's happening is each interval, they have an onboard unit. It's an OBU. It's an onboard unit, and they have that inside of their truck. And each interval, that onboard unit, is going to send out GPS signals to one of our services, right? So one of our services is basically going to receive these, let me fill this real quick. So you're going to basically have, my driving skills are not the best, so we're going to make a truck. How can we, something like that, and then you have some wheels here, right? This is a truck, and this truck is basically an OBU, which my coding is better than my drawing. I'm so sorry, but stick with me, right? This is a truck, and it's going to send GPS coordinates, right? And it's going to send that to, for example, one of our services, right? And this is going to be, for example, we're going to name this the receiver, right? The receive, something like that, right? And what the receiver is going to do, its job is to basically receive the coordinates from the trucks that are driving. It's not only one truck, it's going to be multiple trucks working for multiple companies, multiple different companies, and each OBU will be tied to a license plate and all that stuff. And the receiver is going to receive that, right? So what the receiver is going to do, and this is a very important aspect, because a microservice, a lot of people have a misunderstanding. They think they are building microservices, but at the end of the day, just building a small service. And a small service is a microservice. If you really want to know what a microservice is, it's basically just a single small piece of unit, a computational unit most of the time, or a storage unit, or whatever you want to call it. And it's going to do one thing most of the time. It's going to do one thing, and it's going to do that thing very well, very orchestrated, measured, instrumentated. You know what I mean? It's going to have different transports, and maybe there is going to be a storage attached to it, right? Who knows? And this is, yes, this is the icon for the database. It's my bad. I'm going to delete this because it makes no sense, right? So basically, the receiver is going to receive that. And what it's going to do is it's going to receive the signals here, right? And it's going to put that onto a Kafka queue, right? Kafka. Apache Kafka, yeah? You know what I mean? Why does it need to do that? Well, it's very important because let's say we have, of course, we're going to have multiple services, right? And we're going to write every single one of them with our bare hands, you know what I mean? But let's say everything behind this thing here, for example, if something is working here, right? If something is broken, right? So maybe there is a mistake, or maybe we're missing some data. We never know. You never know what's happened. Maybe there's a service is down and we cannot process data for 4 hours or something, right? What you going to do? You're in big problem because you cannot calculate. You're missing a lot of GPS coordinates, so you basically cannot calculate exactly. Maybe the truck is going to off-road. You know, a lot of things can happen. So you're missing a lot of data, which basically means that the invoice you need to calculate on the end of the day is going to be less. And what the customer never wants is to receive less money than you actually need to get, right? So how are we going to solve that? Kafka is going to solve that for us because we are going to store all these coordinates into Kafka, right? And what we could do, each time we have a problem, we can replay each day deterministically, right? Because everything is in Kafka, and if we have a problem, there is no issue because we can just replay the whole day as if it was never happened, as if the mistake was never happened, right? So that's why we do Kafka, right? So the receiver is going to do a simple thing. It's just going to receive these coordinates and it's going to put them on Kafka, right? So the next thing we're going to do is, can I basically go back? Yes, yes, yes. So once it's on Kafka, we're going to make another service, right? And this service is basically responsible. What this is going to do, it's going to pull data from Kafka, right? It's going to pull data from Kafka, these coordinates, and it's going to calculate the distance. The distance on a bunch of coordinates, and it's going to calculate how much kilometers it basically drove on a toll road. Are we going to do all these crazy calculations to do that? No, in Belgium or in another country? No, of course not, right? But we're going to mimic coordinates and we're going to just calculate the distance between these coordinates in some 2D space, right? And yeah, it's going to calculate the distance, and based on that distance, we can calculate how much they need to pay based on how heavy the truck is. Because some trucks need to pay more because they are more, how do you say that? They release more toxic gas or something. I cannot find the word. Please leave it in the comments, right? So basically, yeah, so we're going to pull data from Kafka, right? And this is going to be I'm going to call this the distancer, or the distance. Is it with a C or an S? I have no clue. Let's do something like that. So it could be a C or an S, right? So you cannot pitchfork me. It's going to be the distance calc. Jesus. This is going to be the distance calculator. The only thing that service is going to do is going to pull data from Kafka, and it's going to calculate the distance that is drove on toll roads, right? So once we have this is going to send. It's not going to put it on Kafka. We're going to send that. We could, but it's going to put this data, and it's going to use another service here, right? And this, I need to be careful that I don't draw in my camera. And this service is going to be the invoicer. How do you invoice? I cannot even. Invoicer. I'm so sorry. I need to buy a course on how to draw on a blackboard. Anyway, so we're going to call this invoicer. And this invoicer is basically responsible for making an invoice, right? So what it's going to do, it's going to take the distance from the distance calculator, right? It's going to get that, and each time it gets a distance, it's going to store that somewhere, and by the end of the day, it's basically going to call another service, right? This invoicer, and I need to basically, I'm going to do this a little bit better, by the way. Something like this, distance calculator. Can I scroll here? No, I can't. Maybe I can do it also not. Maybe this also not. What the fuck is going on? So, wait. This distance we're going to make this invoicer here, by the way. It's going to be the invoicer. Invoicer. invoicer, just like this, right? And so the invoicer is going to grab data, is going to get data from the distance calculator, and the invoice will call another service, and we're going to call this the invoice. Damn, guys, I'm so sorry. Invoice calculator. This is going to be a meme for a long time. It's the invoice calculator, and the invoice calculator is going to calculate based on the distances we give it, and based on the distances, and for a single license plate or an OBU ID, whatever, and it's going to return that to the invoicer. So why don't we use the calculator in our invoicer? Why don't we just make it in the invoicer? Because maybe we're gonna, if you have a UI, right, you need to think about this. Maybe you're gonna have a UI, and some people wanna, for example, they wanna pre-check how much it's going to cost for a couple of kilometers, right? Maybe you're a trekking company, a driving company, a transportation company, and you want to check, okay, I'm going to drive from here to, from France to the Netherlands or something. I'm going to drive through Belgium. How much is that going to cost me? So they can do that directly without all these other services. It can basically, we're going to make a gateway here, and this gateway can basically receive a request, and we're going to call directly this invoice calculator, and it's going to return some data. You know what I mean? Something like that, right? That's basically it, right? And this invoicer is going to call the invoice calculator, and it's going to store that into a database, just like this. That's going to be a database, DB. What DB it is, I don't know. Maybe a time series seems a good approach. And then we're going to have, of course, in our gateway, another request here, which is basically can fetch, not this DB, that's bad. It's going to use this invoicer to get invoice data back. That's the stack. That's the game plan. You know what I mean? You see this, right? And I can guarantee you this has never been taught, right? This whole stack, how are you going to make this? We're going to Dockerize that stuff. We're going to use metrics, Prometheus, Grafana, so we can check what's going on. This OBU here, we're going to make a simple Go. This is not going to be a service. We're going to make a simple Go program that basically mimic some random coordinates into the space, so we can receive these things here, and we can build our stack like that, right? So don't get me mistaken. This is, I swear to God, this has never been taught. That's what we're going to make. This maybe seems a little bit overwhelming, but like I said, guys, the full-time GoDev program, we did the basic Golang stuff, we did concurrency, we did a JSON API, a complete 20 episode, maybe it's even more, 21 episode long JSON API hotel reservation backend. But if you want to be a Golang professional, and I'm going to repeat this, if you want to be a Golang professional, most of the time are going to be doing these kinds of things. You're going to make these services. Maybe you are responsible for the receiver. Maybe you're in the team of the distance calculator. Maybe you're going to be responsible for the distance calculator and the invoicer. You know what I mean? So it's very important, right? That's what you're going to do as a Golang engineer. That's what I did as a Golang engineer, and that's what where Go is made for these kinds of things, right? So that's that. If you're going to grasp the concepts we are going to cover here, I can swear to God that finding a job is going to be easy, right? Of course, take this with a grain of salt, because we're going to cover that in the other chapter, right? The chapter on how to land a job, because there are a lot of mistakes you can make, especially in your resume and in your GitHub profile, but we cover that in the next chapter. But if you know these concepts very well, and you can write them out, and you made them, and you repeated them, and you basically played around with them, you're going to know everything you need to know to become professionally active as an engineer, right? And it's not only going to help you with Golang, but these concepts, right? Knowing these patterns, knowing these how these things work in real life, how we're going to build that up, right? Knowing these things can also help you for whatever other language it is, right? Because they also teach you to-do lists, and they're going to teach you how to react on videos, and ha ha ha, and ho ho ho, and TypeScript is bad. No, the playtime is over, right? This is going to be real education. This is going to be a life changer for you, if you know that, right? Cool. Thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next lesson, where we're going to start building this stuff. Cheers.